Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Borderless. I have a very good friend of mine today. I've known him for 4 or 5 years. He's an amazing fellow. We went to school in Norway, and it's just amazing how I've seen him grow over the years. And it's such a pleasure to have you here today, Eduardo. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure is all mine. So we met in 2013 at UWC, and you're one of the people who I've seen you've grown tremendously over the years, and it makes me so happy to see you just grow, because I've known you for such a long time, and seeing you now and looking back to who you were before, it's so obvious that you've grown a lot, and I'm just happy to see you, do the things you do, speak up for the communities you belong to, even the ones you don't belong to. So it's such a pleasure to have you here today. So you're from Panama, yeah?
Yep.
Can you tell us a bit about Panama? Where is it located? If I visit Panama, what can I do?
Yeah. So I was born in Panama City, but my parents separated when I was 4, so I moved to the countryside with my maternal grandparents. So I lived 2 hours away from the city in a small town called Anton. And it's a 5,000 people town, like population-wise, and that's where I grew up my entire life until I left to United World College, where I met you in Norway.
Yes.
And Panama is located in Central America, and it's a very small country, almost 4 million people.
Okay.
In terms of population, and it's a very diverse country. I would say that if you go to Panama, one of the things that people mostly enjoy it's the diversity in terms of food, music, but also the beautiful landscapes. We have the Caribbean side, and we also have the Pacific Ocean. So it's a very beautiful place in terms of outdoors and landscapes.
That's amazing. So you're from Panama, and you just said there's a lot of landscape, a lot of outdoor, things to do. When you went to Norway, because Norway had a lot of fjords and mountains, did that remind you of back home, or was it completely different?
It was completely different, I would say. I mean, when I was in Panama before Norway, I was not that much into outdoors. I would say that I didn't know much of the landscape in Panama because I was just so isolated in my own bubble in the countryside, in that specific area, and in the city. So I wasn't really into exploring and doing hiking and going out on trips, to the coast or stuff like that, until I left Norway.
No, absolutely. It's the same back home. We have a lot of mountains, but I've never ventured out into any of them because it's a mountain. What am I supposed to go do there? That was just the mentality basically. Well, I went to Norway. I'm like, people are making such good use of their time, going to exercise, and then I went home. I think I went up to the mountains once or twice with my friends. We went to find some plums. So it was a good experience. Now it definitely opened my mind to things I saw before, but I couldn't really connect to. When I went back home, I could definitely connect. I valued hiking. I valued just going to the mountains and having time for yourself.
Yep.
Was that the same for you too?
I would say so. I think, when I left Norway, I was 16. So I didn't have as much freedom in order to, just go in an outdoor trip to a random mountain in Panama.
Yes.
And I feel like I wasn't even aware of the whole hiking culture as I became aware of when I went to Norway. So I would say that for me, especially hiking was one of the biggest eye-opening for me when I went back to Panama, because I became really into exploring my country a little bit more and enjoying those beauty of nature that I didn't enjoy before because I just wasn't aware.
Yeah, exactly. That's amazing. You were 16 when you left Panama. You left at a really young age. So first of all, how did you know about UWC?
Okay, so I got to know about UWC when I was 12.
Oh wow, 4 years before.
Yeah, and if I'm not wrong, that was in my first year of middle school, and I was in a theater group.
Okay.
And I was the only guy from middle school in that theater group, and the other people were from high school. So there were a bunch of 16, 17 years old with these 12 years old.
Yeah.
And for me, that was something that allowed me to grow a lot. And one of the people there applied to United World College and got in. And she happened to be my neighbor, and she happened to be a good friend of mine. And she went to University of Costa Rica when I was in middle school, and that's how I got to know. So since I was 12, I knew that I wanted to apply.
That's amazing.
So I was just waiting for the age in order to.
How was the application process like for you? Like, how was the interview like? And when you knew you were gonna go to Norway, I mean, you were 16. You know, like you were super young. What was your reaction, and what was the reaction from your family too?
So the application process, at the time we had to do a paper application process and then mail it. And it was a bunch of essays and information about who we are, what we do, social service, but also about, you know, what are our contributions to the country in terms of, I don't know, culture. So we were 12 people that passed to the last round, and that's how we met. All of us met, and we had to do a social service together, and it was a very beautiful experience. And after that, we had an interview, and the interview was a lot of fun for me.
Yeah.
And it was also very challenging because I never expected the questions that they asked me. So I remember vividly this guy asked me, what happens if your roommate has a really bad smell? And to my mind, I was like, is he really asking me this? Like, and I didn't understand why. And it was just, you know, questions that threw me off. And it was just very interesting, you know, the whole dynamic. And I remember it was just like a table with like 8 people and me in the middle. It was very like challenging, but at the same time I had a lot of fun, because I think for me it was also a self-realization of who I was and what I was doing.
Absolutely.
At the time. Absolutely. In Panama. And when I got in Norway, for me was one of the most exciting times of my life. I remember that the first thing that came to my mind was like everything paid off. Since I was a kid, I was always motivated to leave the country, because for people who are in the countryside and for people who are from a low-income family, going outside and being able to study outside means a huge thing. So I was really happy, very, very, very happy, and at the same time very nervous. And most of my family didn't know that I applied. The only people that knew was my mom. Yeah. So it was a huge shock for everyone. But I can imagine. But I would say that my family in general was very, very supportive, because for them that meant also a huge achievement. I was raised by a single mother, and for her that meant a lot. You know, the fact that I was able to have those opportunities that she didn't have. She only had a high school diploma, and obviously she was really excited that I was able to, you know, get a high school diploma outside Panama and even do more after that. So are you a first generation student? I am. I bet your mom will be. You know, that's amazing, man. I'm so proud of you, and I'm so happy for you. That's amazing. So when you heard about UWC, you definitely had some, you know, things in your mind like, oh, UWC is gonna be like this. When you went there, was it the same as you thought, or were things different? What were different for you, and what was the same for you? I think some of the things that were similar to what I thought was the whole diversity of the place. The amount of people from all over the world that I met, and that's something that I expected and that I had in mind, and that's one of the most beautiful aspects of UWC, I would say. I think something that I wasn't expecting as much was how rigorous the academic system was. Like, I knew that it would be hard, but I didn't know it would be that hard.
Yes.
And I didn't speak English at the time. And I don't know if you remember. And I was just this very idealistic guy from the countryside in Panama who was like, yes, I'm gonna share my culture. But then I wasn't thinking so hard of like, you're gonna struggle a lot for the fact that you don't know English. Like, even native speakers struggle a lot with the academic program itself, and they speak English perfectly, and you don't speak English, so it's gonna be even harder. And I think I wasn't ready for that at the beginning of my experience in United World College.
Yeah. That's an interesting point you brought up. You see, international students, I feel like we don't give ourselves enough credit for how tough we are, because we're actually tough.
Yep.
Honestly, you left Panama at 16. You went to the school in Norway. Really hard, rigorous extra-academic curriculum. You know, you were just learning how to speak English. Well, here you are today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, from that kid who couldn't speak English to adapting and learning how to speak English along the way to making it to the US on scholarship too. That's incredible. You know. So for you, what helped you adapt? Basically, what helped you adapt, and how did you overcome the whole? Because it's overwhelming. You know, you're in a new place. You're young. You can't even speak English. You know, and all the classes were taught in English. So how do you manage to just get around and settle well in your classes and be able to pass all your classes and all that stuff?
I think one of the things that helped me the most in adapting and learning English when I went to Norway was the fact that I wasn't afraid of making mistakes. Like, I don't know if you remember, but I remember myself sitting with a bunch of strangers in the cafeteria and just speaking in like body language. Like, I didn't care, and I looked so stupid looking back at it. But it's just like, I don't think I ever felt afraid of saying something or saying things in a wrong way in terms of pronunciation, or just throwing a random mix of words that didn't make any sense, but at least I tried. And I think that's one of the biggest thing that people have to learn whenever it comes to language, because you'll never learn unless you try and people correct you and people tell you, Eduardo, you need to say this word instead of this word, or this is not conjugated in the way it is. And I remember in my first week in Norway, I said, in order to say I was hungry, I said I have a big hungry. And that's something that I kept with me until today, because it's such a bad sentence grammatically speaking, but like, people understood what I wanted to say. And I think that's one of the things that many people are afraid, and it's the fact that I feel like people are not used to failure and being seen as a fool, or we try so hard to be these perfect people, academically perfect, with no obstacles whatsoever, but that's not the reality that we live. And I think that sort of mindset was a key for my learning English experience, and also for my academic experience in Norway in general. Amazing.
I mean, I absolutely agree. A lot of people are too scared to make mistakes, because there isn't this safe space usually where people can just come out and say, hey, I lack this. I need help with this. I need help with this. And that's a sign of strength, actually. It's not a sign of weakness. For you to be able to actually come out and say, hey, I'm not even scared to speak because my accent is different, because that's a sign of strength. It's and I feel like people should do it more, because that's how you get corrected if you make a mistake, just like you said. That's how you're doing something wrong. You know, especially with your peers, first of all, you have to feel comfortable with them, and people have to make the environment comfortable for people to grow, because that's the only way we grow. I say something about you like, oh, it's said this way, not this way. It stays with me. Next time I know what to say. You know, so absolutely, I definitely do agree. When I know at UWC, you were always dancing, always singing. You know, you always this guy. It's a show. Eduardo is on stage. You know, is either singing or is dancing, and you're so good at both. And I don't know how you balance both of them. You know, when did you start singing and dancing? Like, at what age, and how did that happen?
So in Panama, there is this stereotype that we are born dancing, and actually my parents met in a dance event, nice. And dancing is a huge aspect of Panamanian culture. And since I have memory, I remember my grandparents and my mother teaching me how to dance, and I have pictures of my 4th birthday and my 5th birthday with my mom. She teaching me how to dance, and it's so part of my culture. And to me, dancing is not even just a performance. For me, I tell my friends, it's my antidepressant. It's a therapy. It's what keeps me going. It's this moment where I feel so comfortable with myself, with my body. I feel like the language of dancing, it's something that is so beneficial to my well-being that's why I do it. I do it mainly because it really helps me to cope with obstacles, with hard moments, but at the same time it's also this way for me to express happiness, joy. Absolutely. And since I was a kid, I was involved in dancing and singing. I didn't know I was able to sing until I was like 11 or 10. And that happened because my teacher, he used to be a singer and he also played the guitar. So he made all of us in the classroom to try it. And then he told me like, yeah, you should go to competitions. And at the time that I started singing, it was a traditional song that we called decimas. And I started singing that, and then a professor approached me in one of the singing competitions, and he was like, maybe you should try to go to the church choir. Yeah. And I never thought about it until that moment. And I joined the church choir when I was 11 until I left to go to Norway. So I was in the choir for like 5 years. And that's how I started singing. And then when I was in the church choir, some of my colleagues or my mates, we decided to create a salsa orchestra and like Latino or like music orchestra, and we played in like hotels, but it was mainly for fun. It was mainly to have a nice time. So since I was very young, singing and dancing and music in general have been a huge part of my life, not only as a performance but also as a therapy and as a way to express emotions. So
absolutely, that's amazing. That's amazing. So does it come naturally to you? Do you have to like do you put in a lot of work? Because I know people are different. Yeah. If I want to dance, I'll have to practice every day. That's just me, Because I have to work on my moves and all. How is it for you though? Does it come naturally to you? Do you get the moves just like that?
I would say that it's
a bit of both.
Yeah, like it depends on the dance, but like I think for like people in my family, it comes so natural. Yeah. Like I don't think people realize how huge this aspect of my life was. I remember every Sunday waking up to salsa songs in order to clean the house, and then
just dancing,
and then you see my aunt and my grandma dancing with the groom, and it's just so part of my culture that I think for me it just comes natural, especially when it comes to Latino dances. And to me it's a huge part, and I would say that I dance more of urban dance, of street dance than technique, and that's for the same reason, because I was raised with more of an urban sort of vibe when it comes to dancing. So.
Absolutely. Have you ever thought about like being a professional?
No, I don't. I mean, I have some of my friends back home doing it professionally, and it's a lot of work. I don't think I have what it takes right now to do that because I never did technique early on, so I'm not sure how good it would be for me. At least at this stage, it would take me years to be a professional dancer. But as I said, to me, I don't want to see dancing as a technique or as a profession. I see it more as my hobby, as my way to enjoy life, and I don't like to put so much pressure in the work that I have to do because I think it takes the joy away from what I see or perceive.
Yeah, you want it to be something that you enjoy.
Yeah, I don't want to have a lot of pressure when it comes to.
We're in the same dance class this semester.
Yeah.
African dance.
Yeah.
7:30 in the morning.
Yep.
Sounds familiar.
Yep. It's way too early.
It is. That's an early class. I wake up. So whenever I'm late to go to class, it's because I didn't work out. Because whenever I walk out, I'm always 15 minutes early.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
So what time do you work out? Like 5?
4, 5. Yeah.
Wow.
With Anita, so it's not just me. She always like, hey, we need to go to the gym.
She tells me about it.
Yeah.
No, that's crazy. That's too early.
Yeah, and it's crazy though, because I have to wake up, go to the gym 4, 5 in the morning, come back, shower. I'll always go to class, like always, because I'd be up already, but whenever I'm in bed, it's like, I snooze and snooze and snooze and snooze, and then I'm always like 5 minutes late max, because it's so early. But that's been one of my classes this semester where I go and just relax. It's been really good for me, and you are someone who is into dancing and all. How's that class for you? Like, how has it been for you the whole semester so far? What do you enjoy the most?
I mean, the class. I mean, for people who don't know, this class it's a class that is more than dancing, and it also has a lot of history component in it. And it's an African dance class that includes the African diaspora. And I'm an Afro-Latino. I'm an Afro-Panamanian who was really interested in getting to know those dances from Africa. From the continent itself, and also how it developed into the dances that we have in the diaspora. So I would say that the class for me was really, it's until today, it's really interesting because, for instance, last class we did a lot of things related to the slavery trade, and how these people from Africa, from all over Africa, ended up connecting to each other, even though they had different languages and backgrounds. And to me that's lovely because it's a history that is really close to me.
Absolutely.
And that in Panama people are not really aware.
Same background.
And it's just so lovely. And I'm privileged to have the opportunity to learn those things, and I enjoy it. Whenever I go to class, I always feel so excited to know what's gonna happen, and because we never know, the class is really flexible, that you don't know if you're gonna dance, do meditation at the beginning, or you're gonna just have a lecture. And I think I'm enjoying a lot the information side because it's a lot to do with what I like and what I study as well. But also the movement parts and trying to understand the different aspects of African dance that I think they are really enjoyable and interesting to learn.
For sure. Yeah, it's been good for me too. There's so much I'm learning when it comes to the information side.
Yep.
The documentary we watched in class was solely focused on Sierra Leone. And I didn't even know there was a documentary like that out there. So it was good for me just to learn all those things. And also the meditation we do is amazing. I know we were together the other day when we were meditating, and then this girl just left. She just left in class, and we were like, oh, she's sleeping. We're like, no, she is not sleeping. And then after like 2 or 3
she was sleeping. She was sleeping.
Because it's so early and all, but she makes it so much fun. And I'm definitely learning a lot. And just coming And just from there, the whole African history, the whole slavery thing, you're someone who's always speaking up against racism. You go on your social media, you're always talking about it. There's a protest on campus, you're always there. People know you in the community for that. You're always standing up for LGBT rights, for racial discrimination, sexual discrimination. You're always talking about those things. You're always trying to get people together, say, hey, speak up for what's right. Have you always been like this, or was that something that developed along the way?
I would say that since I was a kid, my family always raised me to be true to who I am in terms of my beliefs. And I remember since I was in middle school, I was always standing up for things that I didn't like or that I didn't think were right. So like I had a math professor, a math teacher that he didn't teach us well in class, and he did it on purpose for us to pay $10 in his personal time for lessons, and he would give us the quizzes. And I reported him to the rector's office, and I got in huge trouble. I had to move school, and I've been always like that. Like I think my family always raised me with that mentality of you need to stand up for what you believe is true, and for what you believe it's being unjust. And I think I carried that with me since I was a kid. And when I went to Norway, things changed a little bit, because what is standard for in Panama were things that, corruption or things in classes, but there were never things close to my identity or things like that. So, I mean, when I went to Norway, it was this huge realization of who I am as a person. What am I? In my household in Panama, I was never to say the word black, and my parents are whiter than me, and I'm the darkest of my family among my dad, my mom, and myself. But then my grandparents are really black, and it's just this culture in Panama that blackness used to be, especially when I was a kid, used to be considered more of things related to criminality, to to drugs, to alcohol, to
And that's what the media shows too.
Yeah, and it was really hard for my family to say, yeah, you're black, Eduardo. So they always call me cinnamon color. And in Panama, we don't have many things related to like race census. So like, I never identified as black when I was in Panama. I always said, oh yeah, I'm mixed or I'm cinnamon color. And cinnamon color is not even a race. But that's how my parents call me. But when I went to Norway, I would say that there were so many changes, right? Like it's this experience where you are just left on your own with a bunch of kids from all over the world that are your same age.
Different cultures.
And for the first time, I was able to grow my hair. I didn't even know I had curly hair until I went to Norway.
So you used to cut your hair all the time,
every 2 weeks I had like the 0 here and the 1 on top, like basically no hair.
Whoa.
And I never had long hair when I was in Panama, never. So I had this huge realization, like whoa, I have curly hair. What does this even mean? And you start questioning, right? And it's not only to race, but it's also, as you say, with the LGBTQ community. Norway was a place where I fell in love for the first time for a guy, and to me that was a huge self-realization, because while I was in Panama, I always had attraction for guys, but I never thought that I was able to have feelings for guys.
Because it's not common?
Because, I mean, if blackness is not accepted, imagine LGBTQ related things. Like, it's something that wasn't even on the table.
So was it something you just never acted on? Like, you had feelings, but you never?
I had attraction for guys, but I never did anything in Panama.
Okay.
Because I was so afraid, and I went to church a lot in order to repress those feelings. I even had sort of like a, how you call it, like a salvation therapy because of my gay evil feelings inside when I was 13. So it was just this huge mess when it comes to my sexual orientation. But in Norway, I had the opportunity to, you know, be myself a little bit more. I didn't even come out in Norway. Like I was still like I was dating a guy, but I wasn't even accepting myself as gay. And it was not until I went to Brazil when I took a year off after UWC that I was able to say, yes, I'm gay, and it's something that I have to embrace. And that's when I became true to myself when I went to Brazil, and not only coming out as gay, but also when I went to Brazil for my gap here, I also came out as black, and I don't think many people realize these things, but me being able to identify as black was so powerful because it was the beginning of my activism work and my academic work on blackness. And for me, that's something that is relevant until today with the things that you just mentioned about my involvement on campus.
Absolutely. I mean, that was just a lot what you just said, you know. So it was just a lot for me. But I'm so glad you're here now, like where you are today, from you repressing your feelings just for being gay and going to a church to, you know, invoke an evil spirit that's inside of you. I mean, I can only imagine that was tough.
Yep.
Psychologically, how was that for you? Just, you know, going through all that, you knowing how you feel, but you can't really express it because of either culture or because, you know, it's where you're from. You know, how was that for you, and how did you get past all that?
You know, I always tell my friends, being gay, it's like you never stop coming out. I mean, you always have to go to a new job, you always go to a new place, and it always comes to your mind, how do I
tell these new people? And do I have to tell them? And like, how do I manage my personal life, but at the same time, my queerness is not only personal, but it's also my political, you know, my political views. It's part of who I am. Yeah. And I think how I cope with this, I was really lucky to have an amazing friend group, and I was really lucky to surrounded myself with good professors, with people that were always so supportive. When I was in Norway and I was having all these feelings, I went to a professor who was also gay, and I was like, this is happening to me, I don't know what to do. And I talked to my friends, and you know, people were so supportive. And then when I went home after I graduated from UWC, I talked to my mom, and I was talking to my friends in Panama, and all of them were so supportive. And I would say that I'm really lucky to have that, because not many people like me who are gay are able to have that supportive family. Absolutely.
But I think I was able to be comfortable with my sexual orientation because I was this gay guy who left Panama who was achieving these old things. I think it would be so different if I would be openly gay in Panama, just being there and not being outside the country studying, because I felt like my process of coming out, or the fact that I came out, also opened up this idea of what gay people are. Because in Panama, people think, or in Panama at the time, many people thought that being gay is being in carnival with almost no clothes and being, you know, very sexual on TV and being, you know, very offensive and stuff like that. But I think the fact that I came out being such a different person or perspective from what they thought it was, opened up their minds about that, yeah, gay people can be lawyers, they can be politicians, they can be whatever they want to be. And I think that was the lucky part of myself and the privilege, because I was able to live my truth outside Panama, and I'm not sure how I would have done it if I would have been in the country. And that's why I also stand for themselves. I always try to stand up for LGBTQ rights in my country, because I'm in a privileged position of being here and being out. Not many people in my country can do that. So obviously my activism goes as a way to pay back, I think, to the people who believed in me and to the people that helped me to be in the place I am right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's amazing. Like I said, I'm so happy you're here, you know, honestly, because I know for sure there's a lot of people who can't come out because of fear of, you know, being judged or just family, just because the environment doesn't support the idea of you being gay, which is just you literally being yourself. Like it's just you.
Yep.
That's who I am. Like that's my identity.
Yep.
You know, but there's so many people who are suppressing who they are, and you know, it's like you said, it's such a privilege for people to actually come out and have people support them.
Yep.
You know, because that's like you supporting this individual. You know, not just the idea of who you want them to be, but who they actually are. You know, accepting it and actually just pushing them to be their best selves.
Yep.
You know, so I'm really happy you where you are
you.
today. You know, and I hope this just people listening this who, you know, are feeling the same way you felt 4 or 5 years ago can eventually over the years, you know, get past whatever they're feeling and actually be able to come out, and also your friends and family can, you know, support, because they need that. Like people need support, you know. So just from what you said, UWC kind of like triggered the whole thing of you coming out, but you weren't able to actually come out until the gap year in Brazil. Can you tell us a bit about the gap year in Brazil? Like, what did you do and what exactly there led you to come out?
For sure. So after United World College, I applied for college or university here in the States, but I also felt that I needed to take a break from the whole academic overwhelming experience that I had in Norway.
Yeah, that was tough.
So in my last year in Norway, I was able to see this opportunity that came up for people from our high school, and it was to do a bridge year. They call it a bridge year, but it's basically a gap year with an organization called Global Citizen Year. And Global Citizen Year, it's a program. It's an 8 months program for high school graduates, and the idea is to have a year in between high school and university in order to learn a new language, being exposed to a different culture, and do an apprenticeship. So I decided to go to Brazil because I wanted to link my academic career with that. I wanted to learn Portuguese, and I also wanted to learn about that part of Latin America that I wasn't much aware of because of the language barrier. So I had the opportunity to go to Brazil for 7 months or something like that, and I was able to work in a music organization building instruments out of wood. And my experience in Brazil was so unique because for the first time I didn't have school to worry about, and I had that good thing for me to just, you know,
that's always a good thing.
Process, you know, my 2 years in United World College, and you know, see what I can do now. And I was trying to focus aspects of my life in different things that were not academics. So I was able to do that, and I engaged with many things of the local community, like capoeira, which has a lot of African descendants, roots in the whole martial art and dance in Brazil, and I was able to, you know, do samba and other things that were related to blackness. So that was a trigger point, right, where I saw blackness not as a negative thing for the first time, and you know that Brazil is a country that got most slaves from the whole slave trade, so they have a huge, you know, black culture, and I was able to see that for the first time. I saw people on TV that looked like me, and I wasn't used to that in Panama.
So kind of like led you to accept.
And that kind of triggered me a little bit, like, whoa, that started changing my perspective on blackness. And that was one of the things that started also, like, you know, allowing me to accept myself as black, was the fact that I was able to do these amazing things in Brazil that were related to blackness. But when it comes to my sexual orientation, I remember I was with a host family who was very religious in Brazil. And they were always saying these comments like, yeah, gay people go to hell, and they didn't know anything about myself, right? So I decided to talk to my host mother, and I was like, hey, I'm not feeling comfortable with the comments you say. I'm in a very confusive state of my life when it comes to my sexual orientation. I would really appreciate if you would not say these comments, and tell my host that not to say these comments either. And 2 days after, they kicked me out of the house, and that was the day of my birthday. I remember it so vividly. That was November 10th, 2015.
Wow.
And I remember these whole emotions came to me, and it was my birthday. I couldn't even celebrate my birthday, and I was just thinking, like, I feel like so miserable. I think that was one of the days I felt so miserable for being, you know, who I was. And it was just this whole realization of, like, what would happen if I would tell my family then. You know, I started comparing, and it was just such a difficult moment for me. However, I remember 5 days after that, I was talking with my team leader there in the country, and I was sitting just chilling, like, yeah, I'm doing better with my new family. Like, they changed my host family right away. And I remember I was telling my team leader, oh yeah, by the way, I'm gay. And for me that was like, wait, what? Like, did I just say that I'm gay? And I think that was one of the most liberating moments that I had. Brazil, after that, I came close to things that, you know, I wanted to do in terms of my sexual orientation. Like, I volunteer in NGOs, learning a little bit more, because I was very, very ignorant when it comes to queer culture or queer health and queerness in general. So Brazil was that point where I was able to enjoy, to a certain extent, the fact that I was out as gay, and I was able to go to gay clubs,
just be yourself,
and be myself. And I started being myself, because obviously it's a process that takes a lot of time, and each individual is different. So for me, it was just this, you know, escalating process where I was trying to mainly be comfortable with myself. I was not trying to people to accept me, but I was trying to accept myself, which I think is one of the most difficult things of being gay. It's us being able to accept who we are and embrace that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. I mean, that's just a lot. Like, you've been kicked out on your birthday. Well, you've been kicked out because you're gay, first of all, on your birthday.
Yeah.
Damn. That's a lot. But I'm glad. So when you found this new family, did you tell them about your...
I mean, my team leader and the whole program faced this for the first time. So this was new for everyone. So what they did was that they told the new host family, yeah, Eduardo is gay. And this is something that, you know, are you okay having him? And they were fine. And until today, I'm really grateful to those two individuals. He was my Portuguese professor there in Brazil, and I'm really close to them, really, really close to them. And not only to them, I was able to talk to my host mother, the one from the family that kicked me out. And, you know, I always try to be critical towards these things. And the person who kicked me out, or who wanted to kick me out, was my host father, not my host mother. And my host mother has always been very supportive, and she was listening to me. And until today, she texted me today, like, how are you doing, Eduardo? You know, and it's been, how long, 4 years or something like that. And even though that family kicked me out, I think they were able to learn a lesson of how they need to see human beings
Absolutely.
beyond, you know,
Absolutely.
things like sexual orientation. So I think that was a learning experience, not only for me, but for the program itself. Now the program asks host families if they're okay with queer people, and I think it was even though I hate that I was the guinea pig, like I think it was a good experience for the program to grow, for me to grow, for my host family to grow, and for me to self-realize that I needed to accept who I was, and I didn't want to accept any shenanigans from anyone.
Just
when
don't
it
care
comes to my sexual
about what
orientation.
people think, what people say. You know, you are who you are,
Yep.
and just like you said, accept yourself.
Yep.
You know, and you see, it's been sounds like it's been a long journey for you, and
Yep.
and honestly, I'm just so glad. Like I said, I've known you since 2013, and you've been where you are today. I can definitely see how much you've grown, and I'm just so happy for you. Honestly.
Thank you.
Honestly, you know, but just like closing up and all, from the 1 year abroad, well, in Brazil, you came to you know, and you're a junior now.
Yeah,
You're
almost a senior.
Almost.
Almost.
You're almost there. Man.
Almost there.
Almost. What has been some of the challenges for you? Just being an international student, and how has the LGBT community here been for you as well? Like at OU.
So being an international student, I think being a United World College international student has a lot of benefits. I mean, we have an office with people that are really supportive, and I think at the time that we came to the United States, it was a really difficult time because it was the election, and you know, the whole political atmosphere was attacking, you know, people like us, you know, international students or foreigners. And I was I'm a Latino, right? And that was part of the whole TV discussions, you know, immigrants from Latin America and stuff like that. And it was definitely a challenge, but I think I was able to find a good support with my professors and with my friends and so on. However, I think the university now it's facing a new challenge with new leaders, and we just have a new changes in the administration, and I think they are not bad people, and they're definitely people who have good intentions, but I think many of them are unaware of how to deal with diverse communities like us.
Exactly.
And it's just so challenging right now because I feel so vulnerable to be you know, attacked or discriminated against on basis of the First Amendment rhetoric, and I think that's really scary, because I feel like in places like universities, leadership should be strong in times where the federal leadership or the executive branch of the government in the United States is attacking people like us. So I think the university is facing a huge challenge, and I obviously feel afraid and worried, but I think it's always important to, you know, surround yourself with people that care, but also speak your truth, and being able to, you know, tell people the stories and the struggles that we live, and that we are not people trying to take their jobs or steal or, you know, rapists, and we're more than that, or what the TV says. And that's why I think it's so important, you know, to talk, to do activism, because it's what keeps us going, and it's the key for us to ameliorate the situation of our university. When I critique the university or the leadership, I don't do it just for the sake of doing it, but I do it because I love this place, and I want more opportunities for people like me to come to these places where are majority white people from a specific economic background. And I think it's important, you know, to work with the leadership in how to make these places comfortable or doable for people like us, because besides the academic work, we have to do all these psychological needs that, you know, that demand the fact that we are minorities that have been currently criminalized, oppressed, offended, and it's just a lot, right? So I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we face right now. It's weak and poor leadership, especially in the University of Oklahoma. And I would say it's also the fact that many universities in the United States are facing a lot of white supremacist manifestations because of the new government. So it's a very challenging time for international students, but I would say that it's always important to speak the truth of themselves, to speak their stories, to stand up for what they believe is right, and also stay healthy and you know, prioritize, you know, their mental health, because it can be a lot.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I definitely and I absolutely agree with everything you've said. You know, it's definitely a tough time for all of us, especially people of color at the university, especially the last 2 months, for example.
Yep.
You know, it was a lot, but hopefully, you know, the president and his office, you know, the whole people in charge of diversity can stand up, you know, in times and just protect people of color, because we definitely do need that. There was a guy walking around campus in blackface. Yep. Just because he felt like.
Yep. And he was wearing a T-shirt that said "People of color are not welcome here." I mean, it's surreal to think that these things happen until today.
Exactly. Exactly.
All on basis of the First Amendment. I mean, I don't get how not being able to say the N-word, it's oppressing you. I don't understand how I'm criminalizing you and oppressing your freedom of speech just by you not being offensive to me. Like I don't get it. It
doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense for me until today.
But bottom line, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been real, you know, and it's been such a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank
I appreciate you coming.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. But just to round up, do you have advice for young people watching the show? You know, people who want to come out, or just young people in general, or just everyone out there. Like, what would be your closing remarks to them? You know,
I think
for life in general.
For my queer fellows, I would say, you more than anyone know when to come out. Don't feel the pressure of coming out because of friends, because of family, because of the environment that you are, but you more than anyone know when and where to speak your truth and to who. And remember that there is a bunch of people who are here supporting you and, you know, struggling as you are, and reach out to those people. Surround yourself with people that care and that are actually your real friends, and I would say, speak your truth whenever you feel comfortable. And also to my fellow activists or people who want to make changes, and the allies there, and always stand up for what you believe is true. Always fight for your beliefs, and do it in a way that it can encourage other people to do it, because this is how we make changes, you know, by, you know, encouraging other people to stand up for themselves as well, and to stand up for those people who are not in the privileged position of doing so. So that's what I have to say. And yeah, live your truth and be who you are. Be yourself, and don't live by what other people want you to be.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Michael.
Cool.